Well, you might not know it based on all the videos that I've done up to this point, but I am a huge Disney fan. I grew up with Disney and I've loved all of those Renaissance videos, starting from like The Little Mermaid, The Rescuers Down Under, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King. All of those were a really big part of my childhood. At the end of the day, and after everything is said and done, the one that I connected with most was Beauty and the Beast. There's so many points on that album just growing up that whenever I hear the soundtrack or whenever I think about it, it just still hits me really hard in kind of the feels area. And so lately, on this big Disney craze to live action every movie that they had in the past, I decided to take a look at what I do best and have a look at the soundtrack, because out of most of the Disney full-length animated films, Beauty and the Beast provides one of my favorite soundtracks. And so having most of the soundtrack, if not all of the soundtrack, being found here, it was just a perfect time for me to dive in and really discuss what the music was, at least within the adaptation. Like, I'm not going to discuss the soundtrack as it is, I'm going to discuss it as an adaptation from the original source. So let's dive in.
Just a little change.
What I'm going to do for this particular video is I'm going to talk about the things that they didn't really change too much of, like things that they took straight from the source material. And then I'm going to talk about things they added on, things that are specific to this medium. So the songs that they included in here are changes that they made for the live action one. And then I'm going to finish off this by talking about things that they left out. So first off, some of the things that they have, included that are still the same. And right off the get-go, it's mainly all the songs. All the songs from the original are in here. The only thing that they've kind of dropped out were a lot of the reprises. And what we do find is there is a little bit of a change up just based on the singers and the performers that are here. And that's going to be found with any adaptation. Most of the songs work very, very well. The one criticism that I've heard, and one that I'm not going to subscribe to, is Emma Watson's vocals on here. I mean, it's not unfounded. It's definitely, out of the three, if we take into consideration the Broadway show as well as the animated film, out of the three performers that have sung as Belle, Watson is the lesser of the three, and that's mainly because she's an actress first and a singer second. So when she's singing, it's more of the emotion that's coming out of the vocals as opposed to the raw talent. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's a different approach. The one that I at least felt it on was the reprisal of Belle. Instead of having that powerhouse of Belle really lamenting to the hills that, she wants much more than this provincial life, she wants to explore the great wide somewhere. You get the passion and you get the feeling behind it, but what you don't get is that powerhouse. And it's not a bad thing. Like, I didn't really take it on as a bad thing. I just took it on as it's a different approach. This is also found within a couple of the other songs, such as There's Something There That Wasn't There Before. Now, because this is a little bit more of a subdued song, you don't feel it as much as you did with, say, Belle, but it's still there, and it's still, something that I recognize, but I don't feel it as it is a knock. Some of the other songs that were present on this album that were there before, you definitely have the standout songs. You've got Gaston, which is an amazing rendition of this. I love Josh Gad's vocals on this, being LeFou. I love Emma Thompson's vocals as Miss Pot, because her addition to, say, The Beauty and the Beast is a fantastic rendition, and I love Emma Thompson's vocals on there, so I feel her presence on there is a really great addition to it. It doesn't quite hit me in the feels like the title track of Beauty and the Beast as the original does. With the original, it's just those first 6 notes that get me, and it's because it starts off so hesitantly and so humbly, because that's where each of the individuals are at this point in the movie. And so overall, within the songs that are here from the original show, they do a pretty good job. My hat off to Dan Stevens with his vocal performance as the Beast. He has such a powerhouse that I was talking about. His additional songs are just spot on, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But the other individual that does a fantastic choice is Luke Evans as Gaston. His presence on there is just fantastic, and when you listen to Gaston, because Gaston is more of a manipulator, more of a bombastic kind of egomaniac, you feel that within his vocal presence, and it isn't quite as powerful as Dan Stevens' performance is, because his is more of like a raw power. So I like how each of their vocal presence are mirrored within their character, and that was fantastic. One of the things that I didn't really gravitate to or towards was Be Our Guest. Be Our Guest for me was always the low point of the overall soundtrack. I didn't like how putting on this big song and dance to kind of woo Belle to fall in love with them, and Connection fall in love with the Beast. It's like, yeah, stay here, we're great. Right off the gates, I wasn't a big fan of this track, and I felt like the new take on it here didn't quite work. And it wasn't because of the singers. Like, Ewan McGregor does a fantastic performance on this, like he does in any role that he has. He definitely, put in his all, and he felt really passionate as Lumiere. But I think the main point is the percussion on this track. It doesn't have that energy that I was hoping that this track needs. Because this track, in the end, is a plea for Belle to stay and for Belle to fall in love with them. And it doesn't have that energy. It doesn't have that drive. And the original has at least more of that energy that's needed to kind of beg for Belle to stay. But this one doesn't really have that. So it was it was a little bit of a low point on here, and one that I wish, there was a little bit more. Even though with the big finale, I was a little bit disappointed with that, and I wish that they had did a little bit more with that particular piece. One that I can't say that for is the prologue. The prologue has always been my favorite piece within The Beauty and the Beast. Those notes just hit me. And much like the first 6 notes with Beauty and the Beast, here it's so enchanting. And I like that this is what opens up the whole soundscape. And what I particularly like with the soundtrack is they give you the purely instrumental piece. You don't have the narrator talking over it. And finally having that is such a joy. And I like that they didn't change too much about it, because if something's perfect, don't mess with it. And I think that's why this entire movie stayed so close to form, because it was so well done the first time. You're basically just live acting it. So let's talk about some of the songs that they added on here, and some of the things that they've added within the songs. Starting off, we'll talk about some of the new songs that are on here. Namely, the one that kind of starts us all off is How Does a Moment Last Forever. Within this piece, it was done also by Celine Dion, which kind of starts off the actual soundtrack itself, but was also sung by Kevin Kline, and Kevin Kline did it in the film, and I actually like the more subtle approach and more humble approach that Kevin provides on there. And I really actually enjoy the concept of How Does a Moment Last Forever, because I read a recent fan theory about the town that Belle comes from, and that it is subjective just as much as the castle is. So, spoiler alert, within the town you have Mr. Potts, and within the Song of Belle, Belle actually approaches him and says, "You look like you've lost something." He's like, "I think I have. I definitely have lost something, but I don't know what that is." And it isn't until the end that you realize that what he's lost is his wife, of Mrs. Potts, and his son. That is just a little bit of a hint that the town itself is in just as much of an enchantment as the castle. You get that a little bit within the intro, saying that the town that the castle ruled over eventually lost touch with him. But once you get to the end, you see a lot of the townsfolk finally recognizing the staff and the prince. Because it's in this trap, you have Maurice, Belle's father, as well as Belle, being removed from this enchantment because they came into the town just after the enchantment was imposed upon the town. So within this theory, when you have Maurice saying, "How does a moment last forever?" he's actually kind of commenting about the town itself being trapped within this moment, being almost on a time loop, because everybody's forgotten their memory, everybody is just kind of going through the motions just to wait for this enchantment to get dispelled. And we're all kind of waiting for Belle to dispel this enchantment, because even Belle is saying every day is just the same as the day before. It's just like we're going through the motions, like what's going on, there's no progression here. That was really captured on How Does a Moment Last Forever. Even though I know it's Maurice lamenting about his fallen wife, saying, how can I remember this particular moment within this, within my life, and revisiting it over and over and over again, and it's me that's being stuck here. So I like that concept, and I like the addition of that song. The song itself isn't amazing. like, it's not like a standout track from the original discography. I don't know if it really brings anything new outside of that concept musically. Now, this doesn't really feel that way with the other song of Evermore. And this is really where Dan Stevens takes that mantle of being that beast. I mean, at this point, this is another Audition song, and this is like the Beast's main song. So for Evermore, it's his lamenting of letting Belle go, letting Belle save her father, and, you know, recognizing that, yes, I am in love with Belle, and if I'm in love with her, I can't keep her here. I have to set her free. So he does so, and then we get this heartfelt lament of, you know, I'm stuck in my tower, I'm now trapped, I've made my bed, this is just, I've doomed myself, but I freed her. The emotion that's just out of this is just beautiful, and it's odd because then we have Josh Groban coming in and doing more of the poppy side of things. I almost don't like it as much as Dan's vocals, because Dan had that, I don't want to say he has more of a powerhouse than Josh, because Josh lives and breathes powerhouse vocals. But Dan's, I guess, emotion behind it was a little bit more because he was in that moment performing. So we have that dynamic there, and I love the addition, and it feels more at home than some of the other newer songs that we have on here. Another one of the newer songs is kind of the one that first introduces us. It's right in the middle of that prologue, which is Area. And Area, it's not a great song, it's one of those kind of throwaway songs, but what it does is it gives us a foundation of the setting and the time period that we are, because this doesn't take place in modern time, this takes place quite in the past within the French identity. So it's good that we had more of a sound to really bring us into that environment. So I like that addition to it, but kind of, again, much like How Does a Moment Last Forever, I don't really know if it really adds too much musically to the overall landscape of this album. Some of the other things that they've added in was mainly with LeFou's character, with Josh Gad. As I said before, I loved Josh Gad's presence on this. I thought that he did a fantastic job of portraying LeFou, and what I really liked is within the soundtrack, again, I'm only talking about the soundtrack, they start to add a little bit of hesitation, a little bit of doubt. Within the Mob song, we have one of the refrains that LeFou is saying is, there's a beast, there's no question, but I wonder if it's the one that's in the tower and not the one that's beside me, because this is where LeFou is starting to wonder, is he really doing the right thing of following Gaston? I like the fact that within that one note, we have that seed of doubt that LeFou has, and it has that perfect metaphor of which one of them is the true beast. Is it the beast in the castle, or is it Gaston, who has basically turned into this beast? Within Gaston, the Song of Gaston, I love his addition of him trying to spell out the name of Gaston, but getting tripped over. And having that additional, I just realized that I'm illiterate and I've never had to spell it out loud. What I also like is the addition from the Broadway stage, where we have that final reprise at the end. Now, originally this was supposed to be on the reprise of Gaston after they throw Maurice into the nut house. Now that's not present on here because Maurice gets thrown into the nut house much later on in the film. But what they do have is, instead of saying, you know, who walks around trucking mud in boots like Gaston, they have who makes up needless refrains like Gaston. Now that was something that was apparent in the Broadway show, and I'm glad that they brought that into this particular piece. And that's actually a good transition for things that they've left out, because when you had the Broadway show, you have a lot of the songs that were already written for Beauty and the Beast. The main one is Human Again. And Human Again was originally supposed to be in the animated first feature film, but it was cut kind of last minute. I know why. I mean, it already kind of does the job that Be Our Guest does, but when I look at the two songs of Be Our Guest, Human Again, they both do similar jobs, but they approach it in a different way. And all of these songs also kind of add into the newer song, Days in the Sun. Days in the Sun is the staff and the Beast kind of reminiscing about when they were human and days of, you know, summer gone. So Days in the Sun was like, oh, wasn't it great when we had sunshine and we weren't always in the clouds? And it's the same thing as Human Again, but Days in the Sun is much more of a sad song and much more of a melancholy song, whereas Human Again is much more hopeful. Like, they're not so much looking towards the past, but looking towards the future of, hey, this can actually work. Be Our Guest is more of a plea. It's like a desperate plea for Belle to, accept them and accept the beast and break the curse. And, it's putting all the pressure on Belle. But within Human Again, it's more of a celebration. It's, hey, this could actually work. She's doing it on her own. We don't have to pressure her into it. Things are just kind of coming the way that they are. And it's a celebration of what the future holds. So I wish that this song took the place of Days in the Sun, because I feel Days in the Sun was more of a reminiscing of the past. Oh, woe is us. We'll never have that again. But we might. Whereas Human Again is much more of a, hey, this might actually work, huzzah, let's do this. The other things that they kind of missed out on are a little bit of the reprises and some of the other songs that were in the Broadway show but weren't on this. And so within the Broadway show, you had songs such as No Matter What, which is basically just How Does a Moment Last Forever, but it's Maurice's song of singing out into, I'll do whatever I can for Belle, and vice versa for Belle, for Maurice. The main Beast song that we have here is If I Can't Love Her. And I do actually enjoy Nevermore or Evermore more, so I'm glad that, that wasn't really the case here. And for the most part, I'm pleased that they, kept a distance, but I do wish that Human Again was included on here. And so, that's really about it in terms of things that they didn't include within this, because there are a lot of other songs that could have been taken from the Broadway show, but I feel that's more of a Broadway thing as opposed to just a straight up movie thing. Overall, I still love this soundtrack. Trying to give it a rating is a little bit difficult because of how ingrained the original was. I have the original on vinyl, I have the Broadway on CD, so I would probably put this one as a stream. This is one that I stream, and if you love the soundtrack, this is one that you need to pick up. If you're not a big Disney fan, if you're not a big show tunes kind of a fan, then you might just want to skip this. But because I am such a lover of Disney, this is one that I come back to as a stream. And I do love comparing and contrasting all the different reiterations of this. So that's about it. What did you guys think about this? Let me know of your own thoughts by commenting down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Which songs do you love? Which songs don't you love? What new spins do you like? Which ones do you not? Again, let me know about that down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am close to hitting my 1,000th subscriber. Once I hit 1,000, I am going to do 2 videos for you guys. The first is a thank you surprise video, so keep a lookout for that one. The other one, I'm going to be talking about all of the albums that I have, at least in my record collection. I'll talk about each of these cubbies, so they're probably looking at anywhere between 4 to 6 videos where I go through and kind of talk about each of the albums that I have. So stay tuned for that. So if you haven't already subscribed, do so I can put out those videos soon. Thank you all for watching. You guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.